Welcome to the B-Sides and Beers podcast.
B-Sides and Beers, episode 60. Tonight we're talking Oasis with Simon, owner of WELTON Arms Brewing out of Kelowna, BC. What's going on? Thanks for coming out.
Oh, my pleasure.
Oasis, man. Oasis. I'm pumped for this one. We kind of threw out three different band ideas to Simon, and we went with The Prodigy, and we went with oh, Mike, what was your pick?
The Yardbirds, wasn't it?
Yardbirds. Yeah. And then we went with Oasis, and Simon connected with Oasis. So that's tonight. So I'm pumped up for that. So thanks for joining us, Simon.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, and Oasis was that was a no-brainer for me. That is a band from my local area where I'm from, and was like a quintessential part of my childhood as well. So, yeah, big band for me.
Yeah, biggest band in the world for a good, 5-6 years.
Totally.
Yeah, well, it's funny because it definitely felt that way in England, but I know, they famously had a difficult time breaking into America after having one of the most horrendous, first tours in the US, where they apparently accidentally bought a bunch of meth when they thought it was cocaine, and then just played terrible shows all over the US high on meth.
Yep.
Yeah. That's what makes them great.
It's amazing. Actually, video of some of those shows.
Yeah. No, excellent choice. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about that personal connection with that too. We're going to start it off by what we are drinking, and I'm going to kick it off if you don't mind. I'm going to jump right in there because I didn't want to spoil it, but this is the one that I saved, the Vickers Cross, the WELTON Brewing, the Vickers Cross Stout. And I dig, there's a lot of the blurbs that we've read, and we've read a lot of blurbs over the last 2 years drinking these different beers, right? And this is one of the best ones that I've read, and I like it because it's short, and here it is. A challenging and complex beer that takes no prisoners and packs a heavy punch. This beer is so rich, other beers are jealous. 6.3%, born in England, brewed in Kelowna. There we go. I'm going to try it right now.
Simon, did you write that?
Yeah.
Nice.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. And again, I'm not just saying that because you're here. It's very tasty. Sorry, I don't want to get too into that yet. I'll ask that question in a bit. The other one that I'm drinking is Hoyne Brewing Company. I'm drinking a Czech half dark lager.
Yeah.
Nice.
Oh, yeah. I like those dark lagers.
Yeah, I do too. And I don't know what a Czech one is, but I'm going to find out. And there's a really long blurb on this, and I'm not going to read that. So, yeah, that's what I'm doing. And this is a 4.9%, so quite a bit later. But
Simon, you could probably correct me if I'm wrong here. Where lagers were first done in what is now the Czech Republic, isn't that where brewing lagers originally came from?
Well, It's a good, yeah. I know continental Europe certainly. I mean, typically when I think of a Czech lager, it's using one of the like sort of old noble hops like SARS is what I would do if I was making that sort of beer. But yeah, I mean, definitely like it's funny when we first opened, people would come in and be like, "Oh, I want a British lager," and I had to tell them that doesn't exist. Like we don't, there is lager in Britain, but it's all Dutch, German, French, Australian. Yeah. So yeah, I'm not exactly sure. It might. Yeah, I bet you're probably right. It's probably like that sort of Czech or like Prussian sort of historic area, sort of pre-modern Europe. Yeah, it would make sense that it comes from there. Yeah, I mean they certainly make some of the best lagers now. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's it for me.
Right
Who's
on.
up? Who's up?
I'll go next. So I've got first one here is from Tofino Brewing Company.
Yeah.
It is the Tough Session Ale. It's a 5.0. Yeah,
It's a good one.
there was three. This is the first time I've had I think first time I've had anything from Tofino. And the other one that they had there, which I didn't buy, was I think we talked about it before. Was the what is it? A kelp stout? Do you recall?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I didn't grab it. I wasn't. I wasn't brave enough to give that one a go this time, but I will give it a go at some point, just because it's there and I have to do it. So
Salty. It's salty, probably.
Yeah. I'll grab one for the next recording. But the other one is from also Hoyne Brewing.
Mm.
Yeah, and in the vein of our conversation this evening, this is their Appleton's Finest British Ale. So,
It's a good one.
yeah,
Nice.
But yeah, excited for that one. So yeah, that's what I
Cool
got.
label on that too.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Am I
You're
up?
up.
Yeah.
Man.
So tonight I've got a few here, but I've got a Twin City Power Struggle. It's a s'more golden stout, and to be honest with you, I had it in my hand. I was in line to pay. I turned around to put it back on the shelf because I was like, I don't know, s'more. That sounds sweet. Sounds too sweet, and I just held on to it. It's like an 8%, so also I was like, oh man, it's a 7.6. I wasn't too keen on getting ripped off of one beer. So I was like, I could just like pick up a nice 4.5, whatever stout, a nice easy drinking something. But I held on to it. So, and it's not bad. It is sweet and it's not your typical stout.
Wow, that's pretty.
Yeah.
That's like amber almost.
Yeah. Hence the golden stout, but I mean, it's all right. I mean, I'll let you know at the end of this glass how I feel about it, but
That's interesting. I wonder how they're claiming that's a stout then, if it doesn't have, because like, when you're defining what's the difference between like a stout and a porter,
yeah.
It literally comes down to like there's literally one ingredient, but it's like a roasted malt, and it's like one that's unmodified, I think, is in stout, and then the modified's in porter. I'm trying to remember now. But yeah, so I don't know how you can get away with calling that a stout. I'm sure they have a good answer for it, but it doesn't say on the can, does it?
Disclaimer.
Power Struggle is our experimental golden stout where we replace all of the dark roasty malts with alternate yet similar flavors. So it sounds like it's similar, but maybe not.
Can't believe it's not stout.
Yeah, I can't believe it's not stout, man. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, and it's not, I mean, like, it's different. I'll give you that. I usually like Twin City stuff. So, like I said, I'll let you know at the end of the glass. And anyway, just to keep it short here, I also got a Twin Sales Good Clean Fun West Coast IPA. That's a good one. And then a Four Winds Huff Gold Pilsner. I'm excited about that.
Nice.
Yeah.
What was the last one? Sorry, what kind of Pilsner?
A Huft Gold Pilsner from Four Winds.
I don't know what that is, but it sounds good. Simon, what are you drinking?
So actually, right now. It was a nice sunny day, so I'm actually drinking a German Radler, which is by I always pronounce it wrong. I think it's Schofferhofer. And like, yeah, just fancied something easy right now. But I did have a weird beer just earlier, because I went into the liquor store and I always like to find something I've never had and see if it's worth something we want to play around with. Yeah. And so I had from Collective Arts, which is out of Hamilton. They do really good stuff. If you ever see Collective Arts, pretty much anything is worth trying. But it was a Imperial Sour Strawberry Pastry beer.
Whoa.
And so I'm like, what the hell is that? So, yeah, I tried it. It was good. It does have I'm not like, I've heard, I'm sure you guys have tried some pastry beers. Like they've been around last couple of years. It's starting to get more popular. And yeah, there was kind of that, like, almost like, if it kind of tasted almost like a pie, and it was strawberry and it was sour and it was like 7.5%. So it was pretty buzzy. I mean, I don't think I'd drink more than one, but it was definitely an interesting sort of novel beer I hadn't tried before.
Let's check it off the list.
Mm-hmm.
And did it make the cut? Is it something that you're interested in trying out at the
I mean, it's not jumping to the top of the list, I don't think.
No.
But, I think it'd be actually a cool one to do as a winter sour. Because we're lucky we have 20 taps in our tap room, so we can have some obscure stuff and we still have room for the stuff people really want. So I might throw something like that on at some point.
20 is huge. Like they're all filled at all times? Kind of, you have something going in every one?
Yeah, so that was always my goal, which is why like we actually have a 5-hex system. Like it's not a particularly big system. But that means then is, we have enough, and we have 2 fridges. I have a fridge at the brewery and I have a fridge at our actual tap room space. They're both big. So that we don't have any issues with bottleneck. Cause with some of the other local breweries, if they have like a 10 or a 20 hex system and you want to have 20 taps, well, you have to have, say you've got a 20 hex system, you're making 40 kegs of beer at a time nearly. And so if you have 20 taps, you have to have space in your fridge for 20 times 40 kegs.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Which is that's a lot of bloody kegs. Whereas with us, we do have enough room for, even when we're pretty much fully stocked between the 2 fridges, with our size of system. It does mean our brewer is always busy, but typically that's your salary employee anyway. So keeping them, working 40 hours a week is fine.
Yeah.
And it means then, we literally have kind of one of everything. We have a couple of everything, really. A couple of IPAs always, a couple of different, obviously more standard British ales. And then right now we have 2 dark beers, 2 sours, 2 light beers, pretty much 2 of everything.
And how often do you cycle through different, new runs of testing?
Well, it's interesting. Like we actually, I think we're more sort of like inconsistent with what was on the menu in the early days, where we were just trying out lots of things, and we were, we weren't worried about we didn't really consider anything as a core item to begin with. And now, the tap room's been open for a year. The brewery's been open for nearly 2 years. And so what's happened is it's become very clear what our popular beers are, and the ones that, like, if I don't have them on tap, people are genuinely upset and, seriously disappointed. So those have become just by default the sort of core lineup of beers. And then, yeah, we probably have about, well, usually what I do is I kind of look at what's our like bottom 2 or 3 beers for the month, and then or the 2 months, and they're probably not going to get remade, at least for a while. And then we try out something new. But yeah, no, we do have, there are probably about 12, at least 12 beers now that we consistently brew because, you know, the demand's there for them.
Right.
That's awesome.
How much of those offerings do you have on can as opposed to strictly tap?
To be honest, like our canning has been right now, like the Chester Bitter, which is our best-selling beer in the tap room, is the one that we're always year-round canning. And then I did the stout and the mild. We did runs of those in the winter. And the British Warlock we did a while off, which was our butterscotch ale, which is based on butterbeer from Harry Potter. But we just did in cans because it was kept getting requested. I did a white chocolate beer in cans. And that was, it was funny. I actually only made that as kind of a gimmick. It was like, well, it was actually for my wedding. I wanted to we had a couple of beers on tap at the wedding, and I was like, well, let's do one that's not, you know, for the non-beer drinkers. And we made it, and it's, you know, white chocolate's really hard flavor to put into beer because it's not like you can just pour in white chocolate like you can with cheese.
Yeah.
You have to basically synthetically create that flavor. So anyway, we made one, and I tried it, and I was like, yeah, it's all right, it's fine, and it'll do. And, you know, we used like a keg at the wedding, so I had another 8 kegs of it left, so I threw it on at the tap room, and it was surprisingly popular. So, and then people kept asking for cans of it, so I was like, all right, well, I'll can it then, and so yeah, that's ended up in cans now. But yeah, I'm kind of the cans side of things, like we are in a bunch of liquor stores in Kelowna and stuff, but it's not the biggest sort of thing that we're focused on to begin with. But I think over time it'll just organically grow a little bit, which will be nice. Right.
Yeah. When I came down to meet you that first time, popped in there, and you had quite a few canned at the time, and we grabbed a 4-pack off of you. 2 of them that I had, well, I split them with Flip, and the 2 that I had the bitter and your butterscotch ale, and they were both solid, like super solid. I've been meaning to drive down there and pick up some more, but
thanks.
Yeah.
I can ask now, Simon, the can, or sorry, the label on the can. It's got the different like the different colors and like the different dots on there, like the like it says brown, fruit and sour, dark, IPA, and hoppy. So is that like for this? Is that kind of like the ranking system?
Well, the idea was to like have the basically, yeah, the idea was to color code our cans. So all the dark beers would be purple. The sort of brown or ambery beers would be all yellow cans. They would be like, there'd be black plus purple, black plus yellow. I'm not actually now I'm like, I don't know if that's a great idea, because it just like, if you have the stout and the mild next to each other on the shelf, it looks like the same beer almost.
Right.
So I'm not sure if we're going to carry on with that, but that was the original idea.
Yeah. Yeah. And this the logo is awesome. The crest is
that is all credit to so it's actually based on the crest of the city I'm from, Chester. And I gave it to this is a bit confusing, but it's my brother's brother-in-law. Yes, my brother's brother-in-law. And he actually has a really cool job. He's a graphic designer for like album art is what he does. So I'm pretty sure I gave him this, and it probably took him about 10 minutes. And he sent it back. And I was like, that's amazing. And he's like, all right, yeah, cool. So yeah.
That's the best when that kind of stuff happens like that. But yeah, it's awesome. It's like it kind of takes you back. Like it kind of reminds you like Harry Potter mixed with like, I don't know, like, King Arthur kind of stuff, right? Like it's just, yeah, it's got like the peace sign mixed in there, and just a great crest. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's a bit hard to tell, but like on the right you've got like wheat, which was actually just that's what's Chester has wheat in their emblem for some reason, and then the sword, and then the original one has a lion and a wolf.
Okay.
But he went for the more symmetrical two lions on it. It was. I just remember looking at it and thinking the Chester crest was cool. So yeah, I thought it'd be good inspiration, and yeah, he ran with it and killed it.
But it definitely suits the product. So that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to ask you, Simon, like, so if you, let's say then, take that strawberry pastry beer and you like it and you want to put it into the lineup, what happens next? Like, do you start coming up with the recipe and doing that, or how does that process happen? Like, who orders the hops, who orders the materials? You know what I mean? Like, how does that all kind of come together?
Well, for us, typically what happens is I design the recipes, and I kind of do sort of all the planning stuff for the brewery. And then my brewer at the moment is a guy called Paul, who's an awesome brewer. He's actually from Hamilton originally, and he went to Niagara College for brewing. And so basically, yeah, I'll come up with the recipe, and a lot of like the early ones were ones that I did home brewing and, testing. And, there was about a 2-year period there where I brewed a batch of beer every single week, and just tried something different every week. And, sometimes I'd be just tweaking. Sometimes I'd just be trying something completely new, but, all within the parameters of logic of brewing. And nowadays it's funny, like I just did a new recipe for a saison, and I made a farmhouse saison. I think I made a blackberry saison once at home, but really it's something like, sorry about that.
No worries.
You're back.
Just 1 second.
Where were we? We were talking about recipes and
yeah. So I was talking about the
saison.
Yeah, so so it's kind of like for us, I'm always like, okay, how can I like maybe do something a little bit within our wheelhouse in terms of ingredients and execution, but still do something that's closer to what it should be. So for that one, like we used some English base malt and some English sort of additional malts too. But I did bring in like a proper farmhouse yeast, and then the water, I used a water profile from Belgium, from Antwerp, I think.
Antwerp.
Yeah, to make it hopefully more sort of authentic. And then for hops, just use a simple continental hop as well. And so, see how it turns out. But I know within those parameters, it's not going to be horrible. Like it should be, perfectly fine beer. But yeah, be curious to see if it's brilliant or if it's just good enough, we'll see.
So with like everything that's happening right now, like supply chain issues and stuff like that, like, are you ever like in a tight spot, like when you need to fly in like a different kind of malt or like a yeast, or has anything been affected because of what's happening right now?
Like honestly, like I've had more issues with like supplies for our like the food in the restaurant has been more of an issue, where we're literally like not being able to get like the fish or the potatoes, things like that, which are like, really, like, how is that possible? But actually on the brewing side of things, like typically get yeast from Imperial out of Portland, which is overnight shipped, and they're always pretty on time. And malt, we have a couple of suppliers. Hops is sometimes a little bit, you ask for 4 different kinds and they have 2 of them. But typically if you go to someone else or you wait a couple of weeks, you will get them. And so, sometimes you just have to be a little flexible and, or make little tweaks. And, there are hops that you can swap out for other ones and you can pretty much get the same result. So yeah, you can sort of, I don't know if it would be a lot tougher if we were making, 1,000 hex a week. I think then you're really like, I don't envy trying to, do the logistics for Granville Island or someone like that. That would be a nightmare. But when you're a small brewery, you can just roll with the punches, I think, a lot easier.
And so you were talking about like just making these beers like a different beer a week. So is that how you figured this all out? Like, did you just do this by trial and error, or did you have schooling for this, or how did you put it all together?
For me personally, it was funny. I started watching videos on how to brew beer and reading things when I was in the 4th year of my degree, which is in philosophy and psychology. And I was procrastinating on my final exams by watching videos of blokes brewing beer. And I thought it was interesting. And it was funny because when I started university late. I didn't go to university until I was 23. And I didn't drink a lot of beer at the time at all. And then craft beer was getting bigger and bigger in Vancouver when I lived there. And so I started, I remember someone gave me a Postmark raspberry ale, and I'd never had anything like that. I was so intrigued by this, I was like, this is beer. I'm like, okay, this is cool. And and that got me sort of more into it. And then, I'd never really, and then I think what happened was I went to a party and someone had brought their own beer that they'd made and gave me it, and it wasn't terrible. And that got me thinking. I was like, wow, you can do this at home. Like, you can just make a beer. And but it was funny. I literally then, I kept watching videos and I kept reading, but I didn't make a beer for about 12 months from when I first started reading and watching. And I just kept, what that meant was then the first time I made a beer, I avoided probably, 100 different mistakes people make in their first beers. Because I was so well read by then already that I knew a lot. And I even, before I made my first beer, I went and bought just off eBay from a very affordable one. I bought a wort chiller, one that you hook up one end hose to the tap, and then it's just a copper spiral, and you put it in, and the other end you put into your drain, and that chills the beer. Then rather than it taking an hour and a half, 2 hours in an ice bath, it chills it. And if it's it was like a 5-gallon batch, and it chilled it in 25 minutes.
Wow.
Which means then you avoid your chances of infection go way down. And that was the one piece of equipment that was, cost more than a couple of dollars that I bought. And so, from the very beginning, I was very careful about all that stuff. And I didn't make a lot of really stupid mistakes. And I didn't, I never really had a spoiled batch from the beginning. That meant that my first few batches were, I still made some stupid things. The first fruit beer I made, just as an experiment, I tried adding fruit flavoring using jam. Which does not work. Don't do that.
Did it turn into brandy or what?
No, it worked. I ended up with this weird sort of sediment in the bottom of each bottle. I think there was probably continued to be some fermentation in the bottle, and so it was almost a little bit sort of trubby in the bottom of the bottle. That was a silly thing to try. But, you know, I learned, and, you know, wasn't an expensive mistake, thankfully, because it was on a homebrew scale. So, yeah, so there's lots of little things, you know, and yeah, that sort of, you know, recipe design. And it's funny, sometimes there was some beers we made where I would get it right the first time. And like our mild recipe was literally, that was the first time we ever made it. It was great, and I've never changed it. But then, like the Chester Bitter, which is our best-selling beer, I have made tweaks to that for about a year, where every batch we just slightly change stuff until it is now what it is, and I won't change it at all now. But yeah, you know, sometimes you get lucky, but sometimes it takes a while.
That must be incredibly difficult when I'm just thinking about like a year's worth of tweaking. It's not like you can go back to like a version 2.3, right? Like if you're all the way like 6 versions over, do you have stuff like, I guess in the refrigerator, you can go back to like that, you know, however many versions before, if there was something you liked? Are you able to do that and sort of just like sample different versions that you had done previously? Or is it just like from memory, you're like, oh, I remember like batch 2.4 was really good. I really like this about that batch.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, when I was homebrewing, what I would do was I would throw 1 or 2 bottles under the stairs and put them away just so I could try them 6 months later to see.
Right.
Because yeah, the beer, you know, if it's a hoppy beer, it typically peaks at, you know, 3.5, 4 weeks after you brew it. Like you get the most intense and flavorful hops flavor coming through at that point, and then it slowly mutes itself over time. So like, you know, it's basically, you know, 6 months you have like a hazy IPA probably won't taste that great. Whereas the malty beers will taste fine at 3 weeks. They really taste much better about 6 weeks. And then some of them might taste even better at 4 months. It kind of depends on the malt bill. But so I always found it interesting to just throw 1 or 2 in the cupboard and try it later on and see what difference it made. But yeah, it all depends. I mean, and that's the nice thing about not having pasteurized beer is it's not suspended from when it was pasteurized. It just keeps evolving and it keeps changing for months and months. And like, I mean, I've kept beers for, you know, up to 1.5 years and they're still good and they still, but they, you know, they will taste very different potentially just, because the hops flavor just doesn't last. But if you have some nice malt flavors hidden underneath the bitterness, then, you know, there's something left there. But yeah, I mean, going back to old versions, I mean, I've definitely done that where I've gone back and gone, okay, well, we like that. Well, maybe we try some, you know, maybe tweak something else different, you know, now. Or you change something, you're like, that didn't work. Let's go back 1 or 2 steps and try something different. But yeah, you just, you know, it's half the fun is just playing around and trying to always improve on it.
Right. I would imagine you're an excellent note taker.
Well, it's funny. I'm not as I'm detailed oriented when I make beer, but I'm definitely not. At least I don't know. My wife is a lot better at noticing little things. Like when we built the restaurant together, and she would not let me do any of the like detail finishing on trim and stuff because she would do it so much better. So she made me let her do it.
Yeah, that helps. That saves marriages, man. And if you can do that, I mean, it's like, you know, we always said if you can renovate your house and, you know, with your wife and you can still make it through that without getting divorced, like then it's forever, right?
Isn't that the ultimate test?
Yeah. So I can't imagine like opening a brewery and, you know, choosing all of the trim and everything down to all that kind of stuff. I can't even imagine what that's like the ultimate test. Like,
not just your house, it's your livelihood.
Yeah, it's everything, right? Like that's pretty heavy.
Yeah. No, she did the coolest thing she did in there was I wanted this, like, in British pubs, there's always this like sort of flowery wallpaper effect a lot of the time. And so I picked out this, we wanted it to do that, but make it look a little cooler, a little, more stylish. So we have this like damask blue sort of flowery effect on the wall, but buying wallpaper is super expensive. So I bought this like $55 stencil, and then she painstakingly stenciled this stencil all around the tap room. And if I'd have done it, it would not have been straight, and it would have like probably looked terrible. She did it, and everyone thinks it's wallpaper because it's perfect. Like, yeah.
Wallpaper when I went in there, so it looks fantastic.
So this is the interior of the tap room, because I think I saw pictures of this online.
Yeah, if you go on our website, I think you might be able to see the stencil on there.
It looks, the whole vibe is really cool. It's really original, to be honest with you. I've never really seen anything like it. And there's like a blue flooring kind of material, or was I looking at the right images?
Upstairs has a blue. Actually, it's just painted. The floor's just painted blue.
Yeah,
it's like concrete painted blue. And then downstairs now we have like a vinyl plank that's like a dark oak color. Because I wanted that like sort of old wood look on the floor. And so we installed that actually over the winter. Me and my brother we literally closed the bar for like 36 hours and laid the whole floor. And yeah, that was a crazy Monday, but yeah, I got it done.
Yeah. Hey, let's why don't we talk Oasis? Let's talk a little Oasis, shall we? I want to jump into it because you got a hankering. I got a hankering for Oasis. So
we've been talking about for a very long time that it's been on the list, and yeah. So Simon, maybe this personal connection, I kind of want to go back to this that you mentioned. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Certainly, yeah. So yeah, definitely maybe. I think, did that come out in 94?
94.
Yeah, 94. Yep. So I was I was quite young then. I was born in 89. But I have a brother who's 9 years older than me. Well, I have three brothers, but one of them's 9 years older than me, and he is the biggest Oasis fan. He bought every album. He saw them at Nebworth when they played their famous concert. We all saw them together at Old Trafford Cricket Ground in 2003. But anyway, so I remember from when Definitely Maybe came out, he was a bit of a stroppy teenager, but he used to blast those albums, that and What's the Story, Morning Glory, every morning when he was getting ready. And we all knew every song on those albums off by heart. And you also just couldn't escape them in England. Like, they were just, at the time, besides the Spice Girls, they were the biggest thing in Britain. And of course the Gallagher brothers were just, so ridiculous.
Yep.
And I think, a little bit they played it up, and the press loved to write about it. So you just couldn't get away from them. But yeah, Noel Gallagher, he did have this crazy streak of just writing number one hits. Like, he just couldn't write a bad song for a few years there.
He's still kind of crushing it. I mean, his level of writing has not wavered. Even till with his High Flying Birds, it still has not. They're all fantastic.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And he can get on the bill for any major festival too, and be up there, right, on the bill with the High Flying Birds, right? He's still going.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, he says though himself that he struggles a lot more than he used to. Like, he said it used to just pour out of him. Mm-hmm. And when he was, starting out, and but it's funny because Liam as well. Liam basically now, his band, he did for a little bit. He had the Beady Eyes, and now he tours as Liam Gallagher. But he's basically I think now he basically has the rest of Oasis except Noel in his band again.
Really?
Really?
And they play all Oasis songs.
That's
So they're basically Oasis without Noel now. But
wow.
yeah. So the pair of them, and some of Liam's solo stuff's not bad as well. Yeah, they're both still killing it, especially over in Europe.
Yep.
Well, I mean, Eddie, when you were talking, Simon, like they were big, the biggest band in Europe, or in the UK at least, right? Like over even in Canada, they were the biggest band in the world too. Like during that time, it was blowing up over here too, right? Like it was massive. You couldn't escape it. And
96, 97.
yeah, like it was just everywhere, right? And the video was on, our like Much Music on our video station here in Canada. Like it was all over the place, right? So yeah, it's kind of crazy when you hear like, what was it doing then, before we had the internet connection of that. It's like, what was it like for you? Like, well, it was huge, like they're massive. So yeah, and then I got to Be Here Now, which is kind of the next thing on there too. I wanted to talk about Be Here Now and your thoughts on anybody's thoughts on that album overall.
Well, I mean, they always it's tough. I do sympathize with the fact that like, you have your breakout album. And I think a lot of people maybe don't realize when you get these bands that have an amazing first album, a lot of the time that's probably like not just a year's work. It might be 5-10 years work that they've then compiled into this first album. They've put it out and it's been really successful. And then everyone turns around and goes, all right, what else are you going to do? And you come out with a second one. And a lot of the time, that's where everyone fails. They make a second album. It's not quite as good. It was all right, but, it's not as good as the first. And the band then sort of levels out. And then with Oasis, they had Definitely Maybe, which was really good. And then, I mean, you can argue forever about which was better, What's the Story, Morning Glory, Definitely Maybe. But that album definitely outsold Definitely Maybe and was huge.
Yeah.
So then now it's, okay, come up with a third album. And by then, they'd been touring, doing way too many drugs, perhaps had gotten, their egos must have just been massive.
Yeah.
And so they put out this album, which, like, in reflection, like, if they hadn't put out the other two albums, probably most people would say it was a fine album.
Yeah.
But it just looked like such a train wreck at the time after the first two, and just nonsensical. And like, yeah, like you listen to it now and you're like, oh, it's one or two good tracks. But yeah, it was just, I think everyone just expected them to then release a third amazing album. And, nobody does that. Like, who the hell, there's very few bands you can say had three, world-class albums in a row. That's pretty much unheard of.
Yeah. And we talked about that album a bit before and a couple past episodes where, it was one of those albums where
Shrilly.
It was very shrilly. And it was because of the medication they were on. I mean, the amount of cocaine they were on and other drugs were, when Noel he basically took on all the mixing side of things. So when he is on these certain substances, it's messing with his hearing. So he hears things a certain way. And then after his mix, everything comes out really high pitched and shrill. But he doesn't notice it when he's doing it. But after the fact, it's a hard listen. And there's a lot, you can tell that they were trying to do some really cool things there, but they just seemed like stretched out, a really cool idea that was stretched out way too far.
Yeah. And it's like, how long is that album too? It's like, it feels like it's 2 hours. Like,
I love this song. I love this song. This song is amazing. This song kicks ass. And then you're listening to it and the last minute and change of the song is just the exact same thing, cycling over and over again to a fade out or to a whatever. It's
yeah. It's a funny album, But Simon, you're right. Like I've been racking my brain even since you said it, trying to think of a band that has come up with 3 world-class albums in a row. And maybe that's another episode in itself just to find out if we can see that. But
I think the only band I can think off the top of my head would be Led Zeppelin, like 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
Like, are all bloody good albums.
Yeah. Prodigy.
Or the Beatles.
the Beatles. Yeah. I guess you could call the Beatles. Yeah, I guess so. Hey, like.
Yeah, they were fine, I guess.
They're not bad. Not bad. All right.
I do think it would be hilarious though. Like, you're in the studio with them recording Be Here Now, and Noel's just screaming that he wants more helicopters.
Yes.
Like, okay.
But like that's why I always thought, like, didn't anybody just kind of come to the end and be like, you know what, this sounds awful. Like, you got to go back and like do this. And it was probably just like not telling them anything, right? Like they probably wouldn't hear anything of that. But
didn't need to. It could have been like Nirvana, where once you had that ginormous album, nobody talked to you anymore. It's like you do whatever you want. You have free reign to, Nevermind came out. Anything after that, it's like you have free reign to do whatever you want because you're a moneymaker. And when you look at Definitely Maybe and What's the Story, Morning Glory, those were money-making albums. So it's like your third one, okay, do whatever you want.
Yeah. And everybody had it, right? Like it wasn't just like that type of music that liked it and bought that album. It was so popular that everybody bought it, right? And I think that was another reason why it got so big so fast. It was just popular on so many different levels, right? And, even letting my kids listen to it, I'm like, it's tame. There's no swears in it. It's all tame stuff. And I'm like, go for it. Like, it's reachable to so many different levels and so many different people too. I think that was part of it as well.
Yeah, most definitely.
Well, what's interesting is like, for as much of a disaster as it was, like it wasn't like they'd run out of steam or run out of creativity, because my favorite thing to listen to by them still is The Master Plan.
Oh, I was going to bring that up. I love that. Love that album. And
that's just a collection of B-sides. It's
right.
If you go and like, because my brother had all those singles, and a lot of those tracks were the B-sides on all those singles, and they were fantastic. Like it's still like, I play guitar, and those are the songs I actually go and have learned and wanted to. Yeah, and it is funny because you certainly like you learn them, and then if you go back and learn Beatles, you're like, oh yeah, he did steal all this shit from John Lennon. That's hilarious. But that's
it was open about it, no?
Yeah, and to be fair, like, music and all forms of art, you're always building on the established stuff that's there, and you tweak it and you change it and you try and music's tough because it's not a lot of chords out there. There isn't like, there's just only so many notes and so many things you can do. So yeah, it's inevitable.
I think that's a really good point, because like me and my fiance were listening to Oasis today. We were trying to figure out why they're so catchy. We're sort of breaking the songs down into like, okay, so it's quite simplistic, but like they would sort of, between like the verse and the chorus, they're always like quite different, right? Like that's what sort of like, I think made them apart from anything else that was, going on at that time in the 90s. And so to me, it was really interesting because you don't have to like reinvent the wheel, right? You just make it better. And it seemed like they were really good at that. They're really good at subtle changes that like it didn't really like, register, but it sounded really good. And like, I wasn't a huge Oasis fan, but I think that contrast was really nice, between like, from what I listened to today, just like with a critical ear, it was like the verse and the chorus, but then there's also like the music that they played, and then like who they were as like the brothers, and like this sort of like, drug Addicted and like out of control, like the Australian tour that just went off the rails. And it was an interesting thing that a band that was so radio friendly could be like badasses. So I think they had this real interesting sort of like contrast thing going on that really made you pay attention to them.
Well, and the like what in England I think made them big was people connected with them in that they were working class guys and they were just normal blokes. Like one of my favorite quotes from, I think it was Noel said it, where he said, in Manchester, there's only 3 ways to make money. You either play football, you deal drugs, or you play music. And we were crap at football. We didn't know any drug dealers.
Or they using too much to.
Well, I think once they became big musicians, suddenly they met a lot of them, probably. Yeah, but but that was it. Like they were just. And apparently, I don't know if it's true. I heard that the reason Noel was in the band was because their mum. The reason Liam was in the band was because Noel and Liam's mum made them put him.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, I heard that story too. Wasn't Oasis the original lineup? Wasn't it Liam's band? And he that he basically begged Noel to come in there.
Really?
That's what I got off of. There was a really big documentary DVD that came out probably 10 years ago, roughly, and that was part of it. I think it was mostly based on the making of Definitely Maybe.
Oh.
But who knows? I mean,
who knows?
Everybody has their own little story, and even if you talk to Noel, it's one story. You talk to Liam, it's completely different. And
yeah. I mean, and who knows what they can even remember now? Like, yeah. They but I mean, like, I do like Liam, but you do have to give so much credit to Noel. Like, he clearly was the songwriter, and without him, that band doesn't exist. Like, and would they have existed without Liam? Well, if you look at the you watch the MTV Unplugged set, where what apparently happened. Yeah, what apparently happened was literally they had, like, Liam was sick, which probably meant they had a fight, and Liam was like, screw you, I'm not doing the set. Yeah. And so Noel sang all the songs and nailed it, and just kind of proved, he could have done it all and it would have worked.
Yep.
There's something about Liam Noel, right? Like, there's something about it.
Yeah.
Like, he's got that, he's got that kind of attitude.
Punk attitude, yeah.
Yeah,
you got the mic up, and he's got his hands behind his back, and he's got his sunglasses
with his tambourine and a Stella in the other hand.
Yeah, like, there's something that Noel can't do that, right? And I mean, I totally get it where you're coming from, but it's just like, you still got to have Liam to that whole thing, or else you don't have Oasis, right? And you need Noel, or you don't have Oasis. It's symbiotic relationship, and that's what makes it so interesting, because they need each other, but apparently they hate each other. That's what the media has made it out to be, right? Like, so
it's funny. I mean, I like that symbiotic relationship, because it really did seem like it. I mean, they were two people coming together for the sake of making a band that was super famous, I guess.
Yeah.
And like, I keep going back to the catchy stuff, because it's the catchiest shit ever. I go back and listen to it now. I'm like, yeah, this is all right. And an hour later, we're walking the dog, and I'm just like, I can't get the songs out of my head.
Oh,
yeah. It's just, yeah.
You're right about the attitude thing with Liam, though. It cracked me up. I saw him at the Commodore Ballroom with Beady Eyes years ago.
Yeah.
And it was so funny, because he comes out on stage, and I don't know if you've ever, I'm sure you guys must have watched a show at the Commodore at some point. No matter what time of year, who's playing, if you're down in the front, it gets boiling hot in there. And he comes out in a full parka, as
Yep.
and he's playing his set, and it's getting hotter and hotter, and he is sweating under his arms through a coat. Like, that's how hot he is. He's sweating through his entire coat. He's not taking it off, keeps it on the whole time. And, he's at this point in his 40s at least, he's still pretending to pick fights with people in the audience and mugging people off. And yeah, you're right. Like, that attitude and that showmanship was just, I am a big fan of that with any band. Like, I love going to watch live acts, but to be honest, if there isn't some element there beyond their own music that is, that showmanship, I feel a little let down. Like, I do want that in my live acts. I want them to do something completely mental and just perform and make it, a show.
And that's rock and roll, man. That's rock. That's punk. It should be entertaining. Otherwise, stay home and listen to the album.
Exactly.
It's got to be entertaining though. I saw Mike Patton with Peeping Tom at the Commodore. Same thing. Started lipping off the crowd, and it went the other way. People were wait a second, man. So I mean, it depends on the crowd.
Yep.
But just, I don't know why, it just reminded me of the most ridiculous thing I ever saw actually at that venue was they weren't even the main act. They were actually opening. It was this band called Foxy Shazam, and they were opening for The Darkness. And the lead singer is 5'2". He sounds like Freddie Mercury, really good voice, and he's very high pitched even when he's talking. And he asked for a cigarette during a bit of a lull. Someone throws him a cigarette, and he's like, no, give me a pack. So someone throws a whole pack of cigarettes. He lights 6 of them, takes one drag, turns them over, they're still lit, and eats all of them.
Oh.
And then carries on singing.
Wow.
There's the story. You got to have a story at the end of a show. Show when this happened. Otherwise,
he ate my cigarettes, man.
He's puking in the back alley for 6 hours after that. You gotta stop doing this, man.
I'm sorry, Simon. Were you at that show?
Yeah.
How were The Darkness?
Again, true showmanship. He had 3 costume changes.
Yeah, I bet he did.
Is unreal.
Oh man.
Yeah. No, this is another brilliant British band.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But it's funny because they had that one first album, Fish in the Land, that was just amazing, and they had some good tracks, but they never quite threw out another one at the same level, But
the latest one, man, is
not bad.
I feel like they kind of figured it out. They figured out the mix between the funny and the still awesome. And they've it's come together, and his lyrics are just hilarious. There's an entire song about a robot sex toy. It's just but the whole thing is just brilliant, right? Just talking about getting wires crossed and she doesn't give me any attitude, and all I have to do is just put her on pause, or stuff like that, right? It's just so the lyrics are just so good. But yeah, I just feel like they've kind of figured themselves out now, and there was Permission to Land, and then a few other albums.
One Way Ticket to Hell and Back was all right. It's the same thing.
I like Barbarian too, or the Last of Our Kind is
so good.
So good. Yeah.
You look at Barbarian, or
so
Open
good.
Fire is great, or you've got Mudslide. I mean, it's packed.
Yeah. No, it's good.
Great band. We should do a Darkness episode.
We're on the list.
Totally.
So do you have, Simon, a favorite Oasis album? Can you narrow it down to the album that crushes all?
I said it before, the Master Plan. For me personally,
cool.
I am a. It's funny because we were talking about this not that long ago. Me and my eldest brother, who's a big Oasis fan, and he says definitely maybe. And I honestly of the sort of the if we're not because Master Plan wasn't technically like an A-side album, then I would actually say What's the Story, Morning Glory.
Nice.
I just think it's just banging from start to finish. Like it starts so well. And yeah, there's just not a bad song on that. And that's, there's so few albums out there where there isn't a single track that you're like, yeah, well, I love most of them, but that one maybe I could skip that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, like such a good album.
Yeah, they're one of I think the better like B-sides bands. Like I think of some bands that have had great B-sides. Like I think of Radiohead B-sides, fantastic, right? Like I think of Oasis ones, like so good, right? There's so many. I shouldn't say there's so many. There's not very many bands that have really solid B-sides that go along that complement their A-sides.
Mm-hmm.
Their B-sides are usually like, yeah, that's kind of cool. Like that's a neat idea. I could see why it didn't make the album. You can say that lost, but with both of those bands, both Radiohead and Oasis, both also great B-side bands. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the only other like one that I kind of obsess over literally anything they've ever made is like, wow, and they're such a short-lived was the Smiths, like they just, I don't think, they literally, there's like, I think they've had one song I never liked, but yeah, like again, just everything. And it's funny because that's another like, talking about symbiosis, you've got, the guitar of Johnny Marr and the lyrics of Morrissey are just a match made in heaven. And now you listen to their solo stuff and you listen to Marr and you're like, well, he plays well, but he could do with some better lyrics. And you listen to Morrissey and you're like, oh, he sings well, but he could do with some better guitar licks. And like shit, if they went together, they'd probably make some really good music.
Yeah.
But the Smith, you don't have Radiohead, so
yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
That's it. Hey Simon, thanks for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know what happens. My Siri comes on. I think when I say "Hey," it comes on. So like I have to click it off. Yeah, I haven't done that yet. But yeah, we appreciate you taking the time and then rescheduling with us too, and then waiting for us and working through technical difficulties. It was a great chat with you.
thank you
all
so
the way
much.
around. Yeah,
thanks,
Oasis and beer. Yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah, I was kind of bummed when we got your email. It's like, oh man, he's not going to make it, and then the reschedule is perfect, man.
And it was worth saving it. It was worth saving it in the back of the fridge. It stayed there. So, but it's gone now. No, but it was good. It was good.
Yeah, no, that was great fun. And yeah, no, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Sounds great. We'll talk soon. Thank you so much.
All right. Cheers. Bye.
Cheers, man.
You bet.
See ya.
Peace.
All right, we want you guys to subscribe, share, and review this podcast. Keep it going, keep it strong, because we're having a great time entertaining you guys with B-Sides and Beers podcast.